This content was created purely for entertainment and informational purposes. The creators of this vlog do not endorse drinking and driving, debauchery, underage drinking, public intoxication, speeding, street racing or any other form of delinquency. I'm just a guy, with a drink, talking about cars. Please don't take this too seriously.
Welcome back to Cocktails and Crankshafts. It's your boy, the Killer Bee, the Fat Man, the Africanized Honeybee, the Car Guy Blog 05 at gmail.com, Guy at 05Car on Twitter, at 05Car on Instagram, at 05Car on Facebook. The word zero, Z-E-R-O, the number 5, fifth, the word car, C-A-R. With me, as always, my fabulous co-host, Mae Flowers. What up, Mae?
What it is.
So we've talked about my background. I've been quote unquote designing cars since I was a wee little boy, daydreaming in school because I didn't like what was going on the chalkboard. And in my notebooks and sometimes in my textbooks, I would sketch cars and rockets and aeroplanes and spaceships. And especially as I entered my preteen and teenage years, when I came to have an understanding for engineering and a knowledge of how internal combustion worked, I couldn't do all the math, but I knew the basic concepts. I knew what a car engine was. I knew what pistons, crankshaft, camshaft, connecting rods, turbocharger, supercharger, intercooler, aerodynamics. I knew what all these things were. So reading car magazines and seeing the new prototypes and concepts that would come out every month, every year, was a big deal for me. And I remember when the Vector W8 came along, it looked like a Lamborghini Countach on steroids.
That's a description.
I remember they called it Vector Aeromotive because they wanted us to associate the car with aerospace and fighter jets. And it had rivets. It had military grade fittings, hoses and pipes and AN connections, and it looked like a cross between something out of the Apollo era of NASA and like late 70s. Boeing's going to build their own version of the Concorde, dreams of America's future. If there was a car that was going to fly, the Vector looked like the first American car that would ever be able to fly, like in Back to the Future, right?
I was saying, it does look like that. Very Back to the Future-ish.
I think the Vector was in a movie. I'll mess up if I say it. But now the thing was, the car looked the part. It was low, it was wide, it had a ton of horsepower. It was a Corvette-based V8, which is to say it was based on the General Motors small block V8 spacing, but was a custom, like an aftermarket small block, and had twin turbochargers, made like 600 and something horsepower. But here's where it went wrong. It was little things that made this car, made you go, huh? And I think only like 20 of these things were ever built, right?
Right.
So, Porsche, rear engine, longitudinal engine. Lamborghini, rear engine or mid-engine, longitudinal engine. Since like the Miura. The Miura had a sidewinder, transverse engine, but basically all the Lamborghinis of note since then, longitudinal engines. Ferrari 308, yes, I think the 308 had a transverse engine, but the 288 GTO had a longitudinal engine. The 512 BB, no, don't quote me on the 512. I might be lying. The Testarossa definitely had a longitudinal engine. The 348 and the 356, all the later mid-engine Ferraris, the V8 Ferraris had longitudinal engines. Nobody wanted to see an engine turn sideways because everybody knew that meant that it was based around a front-wheel drive drivetrain set, right? Toyota MR2. Of course, everybody knows the Toyota MR2 was just a front-wheel drive Corolla drivetrain turned around the other way, right?
Sure.
Your Acura NSX. There's a reason why the Acura NSX engine sits sideways, because the engine and transmission of an Acura NSX were from other Honda parts bin items. Modified, yes, but Honda wasn't going to build a whole new. The S2000 was the one case where they finally went ahead and built a true rear-wheel drive longitudinal engine car, and we saw how that turned out. So
Right.
the Vector had this big monster honking turbocharged V8 connected to a GM 3-speed automatic transaxle that had previously seen duty in the Oldsmobile Toronado.
Ew,
What?
that doesn't even sound fun.
It wasn't. But it looked the part, and certainly, excuse me, when you talk about making the magazine circuit and being on the cover of magazines and having these glowing write-ups, the car, for all its flaws and faults, it was the epitome of what a supercar was supposed to be, and it was American. That was the thing about Vector. It wasn't a Countach. It wasn't a Porsche. It wasn't a Ferrari. It was all American.
Yeah.
It drank Budweiser and ate hot dogs.
Yeah.
Let me stop. Probably considering, I don't know anything about Gerald Weigert or Dave Kostka, but I would imagine they were more in the wine and cheese set than the beer and hot dog set. But whatever. The car was fabulously expensive. Basically built for about 3 years, from 1990 to 1993. But okay, so the W8 was based on an earlier Vector concept, and probably actually dates to the late 70s as a functional concept. So there's a reason why it had that very wedge-shaped Countach-like body, because that was the design aesthetic of the late 70s and early 80s. It had the rivets. It had, the aluminum honeycomb semi-monocoque bonded chassis. The 5,000 aircraft rivets were used in this thing. The body was made of carbon fiber and Kevlar. It had all the stuff. The seats were leather, but it had some weird stuff too, like really weird. One, that stupid turbo hydromatic 425 transaxle. There's no way to make that sexy. Okay. So that is the engine bay of a Vector W8. Here you can see the intake plenum for the large V8. Here are the ignition coils for the distributor-less ignition. Here are the intercoolers for the turbocharger and the exit from the intercooler into the main plenum. The turbos are hidden slightly out of view, but there is an outlet pipe out of one of the turbos. I mean, it's a car. That's a better view. So this is turbo on that bank, and this is the turbo on that bank, and a blow-off valve, or actually those are wastegates, not blow-off valves. So, it's a thing. It's a thing. It's a thing. Struts to hold up the engine hatch. But check this out. That's the chassis, the riveted, and you can see all the lovely rivets and the steel roll cage structure above it.
Yeah, check it out.
Catalytic converters. It's a car. It had, it met DOT approval and everything.
Yeah.
That's a consumer. Okay, here we go. This is where the car gets weird. So you got this wide driver's side door seal, right? So guess what this is in the door seal?
What is that?
That is the shifter.
No.
That's how you change from park to drive to park. What is Prendle? Park, reverse, drive, park, reverse, neutral, drive, low.
With your left hand?
With your left hand.
Oh, no.
And you have to step over that to get in and out of the car, right? So it's automatic. So you only got the 2 pedals there. But notice there's no split in the footwell. And the driver and passenger seats are directly next to each other with no console between them.
Yeah, who did this?
Yeah.
Somebody left-handed.
Now, you see the switch, but the thing, it's auto. You could put it's auto. No.
Somebody left-handed.
Bad.
Right. You're doing
bad.
with your left-handed. You're looking to the left. Oh no.
But it's automatic, so you put it in drive and you go. But
And you
because
go, but still.
3-speed automatic with a 600 horsepower engine, you never ever have to put it in low. There's no need for that. But still, so you can see the aerospace influence with all the switches here
Which is
and the
actually kind of cool.
screen, the little digital screen. So guess what the digital screen is?
What is that?
That's basically your instrument panel. So you see these little buttons right here, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Those would change the display on the screen, and it would show like your engine temperature, your turbo pressure, your oil pressure, your engine hours, your RPM, your speed, as a digital readout with little bars that slide up and down. Very 80s era computer display. Supposedly
Very.
that came from an airplane or fighter jet of some sort. I can't confirm that. That's the rumor mill, though, right?
I mean, that's cute, but you lost me at the left-handed shifter.
Right. Well,
I mean, and this is not left-handed people slander.
You lost me with if you want a left-hand shifter, you put the driver on the right-hand side of the car like they do in Britain, and you put the shifter in the middle of the car. But why on earth would you put the driver, the shifter? Because again, it's an automatic transmission. You can put the shifter anywhere. It's a transverse automatic transmission. You can put the shifter anywhere. So why not put the shifter between the seats like normal?
Right. Why would you do this?
Right. So you see, you got these weird windows with the window in a window thing. Because obviously a window and that's actually a bent piece of glass. So obviously you can't have that retracting to the door because you can't go around corners or curves. So you got the power, that's a power sliding window on a window. You have this huge wiper with one blade on the passenger side, 2 blades on the driver's side that angle, and they would overlap in this weird way. You got a little tiny luggage compartment behind the engine in the back, and another little tiny one under this grill here in the front. You had custom built tires, and I've heard that people that have owned these cars a while and had to they were specific built tires for this car. And when it went out of production,
I imagine it was hard to get new tires.
They had to have new wheels made to buy tires of modern vintage that would fit. And that's the thing with a car. There were only 20. Did I say 20? So yeah, there were actually more Consuliers built than Vector W8s.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So the W2 was presented to the public in 1976. So yeah, he'd been working on this for a long time. But you got a weird size wheel and tire combo that after the car went out of production, nobody else could. You'd have to have new wheels made in order to get tires, because it was a 315 section, so super wide, but it was a 16-inch hub.
Oh.
So the same size that's on my Camry and the same size that's on my Nissan. So yeah. But you did have the lovely Recaro seats, but you had that weird sliding window and a window thing. And, race cars often do that. Race cars with plastic windows often have that window and a window slide. So like your Ferrari F40 and your Audi Sport Quattro and your Peugeot 205 T16, your Metro 6R4, race cars. You didn't see that so much on street cars. The F40, the Ferrari F40 being the exception, although we all know that Ferrari F40 was really literally the idea of putting race technology into a street legal vehicle, even if it was older race technology. The car. So this is the funny part. Andre Agassi. Remember when Andre Agassi was,
when he was the hot
bad boy? Yeah.
Yes.
He had one of these, and took a refund on the car because he insisted on delivery before the car was done, right? Because when you're hand building cars, sometimes they get behind schedule.
Yeah.
So he ordered one. He wanted his car. He said, "I want my car." So they took him his car, but the car wasn't really done. So like the carpet melted and something else happened, and like he got a refund. They had to give him. It's just ridiculous.
The carpet melted. I don't even want to know.
Because mid-engine car, the super hot stuff right behind the driver, the turbo and the exhaust manifolds are super hot, and probably they didn't have the proper heat insulation in the car. It was just, someone described the car as vaporware, and I don't think that's fair. They built some cars, and the cars they built ran. I mean, you can go on YouTube right now and find reviews, modern day reviews of running examples of a Vector W8.
Oh,
But
okay.
the car was, the Lamborghini Countach was not a practical car. The Lamborghini Countach was not a good handling car, but it did have the benefit of having been built by a company that had been building cars for, at that point, like almost 20 years. It had a proven engine. It had a proven transaxle. It just was, quirky and weird because they let Gandini or Pininfarina or whoever designed the thing, Bertoni, whichever one of the Italian design houses designed it, designed a car for a look, not necessarily for the ability to roll the windows up and down and have high quality air conditioning. Well,
Right.
the Vector was very much the American iteration of that same idea. The car that we had a look and we had a spec sheet, but we forgot how to figure out how to make the stupid thing.
This is when you wear the really cute shoes to the party because you know you're going to sit down all night because you can't actually walk in them successfully.
Right. This is the girl that it's homecoming weekend, and you see her struggling across campus with her 6-inch stilettos slung across her shoulder because she just couldn't walk in them anymore.
Yes, this is I keep the flip-flops in the trunk of the car because as soon as we get in it, these shoes are coming off.
Now, internet mythology, as I was doing the research for this episode, internet mythology is that one of the guys that owned one of these, I was saying that they had to have new tires, new wheels made so they could get tires to fit because the tire that Michelin designed for the car no longer exists.
Right.
So the thing is, this car is so current, shall we say. It's 2021 as we're filming this, and I don't know when that particular video was made, but it was made since YouTube's been invented, so you do the math. The chief engineer, the head designer for this car, is still alive and available. They called him. He had them custom made another set of wheels, probably from Billet, so that they could buy 10-inch tires of the appropriate size to fit the car. Because that's a thing. Unlike, some of the designers that worked with Lotus and Ferrari and Lamborghini back in the day who are long since deceased or otherwise just unavailable because we're in America. Here you could look the guy up, call him and say, hey, my Vector needs X. And he said, okay, well, if you got X amount of dollars, I can have the parts made. But
right.
the reality is, a lot of people that do have these that they still run, they're very reluctant to let magazines or other entities test them because if anything breaks, they can't replace it.
They can't fix it. Yeah.
The cars are so bespoke and the company's been defunct for so long. There's just no way to. And they were supposedly the subject of an attempted hostile takeover, and the owner managed to block it. But Vector, like Consigliere, like we'll say Porsche, like Lotus, like Ferrari, like Lamborghini, were operations like Maserati that needed to be absorbed by larger industrial concerns that could fund these losses because these cars didn't make money, but that could fund them as loss leaders to draw eyes and draw attention to a particular company or brand or whatever. Porsche survived off of their engineering consultations and the fact that the Porsche family were paid royalties on every Volkswagen Beetle ever built.
Oh.
And there were a lot of Volkswagen Beetles built.
Yeah.
So, real talk. That's how the individual members of the Porsche family made money. And then, of course, Dr. Porsche's nephew ended up becoming the chairman of Volkswagen and going down in disgrace because of the Dieselgate. But he, I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, the idea that Porsche always relied on their close association with Volkswagen, even though they were two separate companies, because of the overlap of the family interests. For many years, they had a reliable partner for certain, to generate the income that they needed to keep making Porsches and selling Porsches and racing Porsches. Lamborghini eventually got absorbed into Volkswagen. Ferrari eventually got absorbed into Fiat. Lotus was bought by GM and then sold by GM and then bought by some other, you know what I mean? Aston Martin and Rolls-Royce and Bentley eventually had to be absorbed into larger companies that could support what they were doing, because making cars in small volumes is not cost effective.
Right.
Never
That's
has
not
been,
where you're going to make money.
never will be. And, you know, for all the talk about Elon Musk and Tesla, Elon Musk did not found Tesla. Elon Musk is not an engineer. Elon Musk was an angel investor for the original founders of Tesla, and they named him as a founder, and then he forced them out. But the guys who founded Tesla actually were engineers. They actually did have a technical background, more so than Mr. Musk. But that's neither here nor there. Point being is that there's a space in between fever dreams of teenage boys and the practicality of building a working, livable automobile. And, you know, engineers hate bean counters, but you need both to make a successful car company.
Very true.
You know, they never built more than 22 Vector W8s. And I couldn't imagine how many of them are still running. But, you know, the engine and transmission, honestly, are the easiest parts to fix. It's the rest of it you had to worry about. But it's, you know, this was the classic poster car. The Countach was the original, and this was, you know, Muscle America's version of the Countach. Which really, and that's the one of the ugliest things you can say about the W8 is that it's very derivative. But in the 80s, everything was shaped like a wedge. So
I was going to say, this does actually look like a wedge of cheese. I mean, it's not as ugly as the Coulier, the
Consulier.
The Consulier.
Yeah.
This does look like a viewfinder, though. I want to pop in the little cassette.
The Italian houses that design Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Lancias and Fiats and such are big on that wedge shape. You saw it in even something like the Triumph TR8 or the TVR Tuscan. That wasn't the Tuscan. There was a TVR built in the 80s and 90s that, you know, that wedge shape was in. You saw it in Lotus. Everybody had the wedge shape because all the Italian designers were big about the wedge, right? But Ferraris had a certain sweepiness to them because old man Enzo wanted, you know, even though he always said that he built engines with a car around him, in later years, as he became an old man, and this was probably after they sold the Fiat, but Ferraris had to evoke a certain response when you looked at them.
Right.
I mean, you can say what you want
because it's a Ferrari.
Right. You can say what you want about the Testarosa's performance. The Testarossa, and I saw one in Greensboro once on the street. I was at a stoplight next to one. In the flesh, a Ferrari Testarossa is an amazing thing to look at. You know, Ferrari 308 is an amazing thing to look at. Yeah, they were popular because they were on Magnum PI, but when you see one in real life on the street, you're like, you stop and go, wow. The Vector had that kind of appeal, but in that very wedgy kind of cliche, you know, when you talk about the 80s as a cliche, it's wedge-shaped cars with sharp angles. And the Vector very much fits into that appeal. But I'm not mad at him. I'm not, it's not like Warren Mosler where I deride his little ugly automobile. The
Hmm.
Vector, I wanted the Vector to work. I wanted the Vector to be successful. I just didn't want the Vector to have a transverse engine and an Oldsmobile Toronado transaxle.
Right. Because these things don't match.
Real talk, the
Uh-oh.
Killer Bee is big on shifting gears. And we're going to talk about my last trip to Vegas and the paddle shifters in the Ferrari and the Porsche where I messed up shifts. But I learned how to use 3 pedals. I learned how to heel toe downshift for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Dual clutch flappy paddle gearboxes are one thing, but we're talking about a classic torque converter slush box. A GM turbo hydromatic. No, that is not sexy. That is not race car. It's a 600 horsepower poser mobile.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I said it.
Tell us how you really feel.
So yeah, that was my review of the Vector Aeromotive W8, late of the early 90s, based on a design extending back to the mid 70s, late 70s. I admire their gumption to stick with it until they got the cars built, though. I'll give them that.
Yeah, man. I mean, you got to try some things and be a little innovative.
Still,
Everything
though,
doesn't work.
turbo hydromatic 425, that transmission was closely related to the transmission in my Caprice wagon.
I mean, they had a vision. It just wasn't 2020.
It wasn't even electronically shifted. It was legit hydraulic automatic transmission. That's just Anyway,
A for effort.
we appreciate you listening to me rant and rave about this old car from back in the day when I was a young child. As always, if you enjoy my content, please like, share, and subscribe. For only 99 cents a day, you too can support a struggling adult as he tries to function in the world of YouTube, which is the domain of young people. Oh, wait, I'm not on Patreon, so I don't need your 99 cents a day, but I could use those likes and those shares and the subscribes and definitely clicking the little bell icon. That would help me a lot. If you do that, I'll be much better off because, algorithm. Right. Really what I need is like a fleet of 16-year-olds to like my channel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, what you need is to create a car dance for TikTok. See
No.
what I'm saying? That's what you need.
No, I'm not doing TikTok.
That's what the kids are doing. That's what the kids are doing.
Not going to happen. I'm on,
yeah, because I'm not a
on
kid.
Instagram. I'm straining.
That's as young as you're getting.
I'm straining myself to put content on Instagram. I'm not doing TikTok.
Oh, you sure you don't want to shake your booty?
No. No.
Shaking it for likes and clicks?
No.